So tonight we are joined by Dennis Hinrichsen, who is a poet joining us all the way from Michigan in the US. He's the author of 10, if I remember correctly, 10 books of poetry, which is an astounding number. Most recently, Flesh Plastique, which came out from Green Linden Press. He has won various awards for his books and lives in Lansing, Michigan, where he was the inaugural poet laureate from 2017 to 2019. And I'm sure now continues to mentor and be involved there in the poetry community. So over to you. Please take it away.
Oh, thank you so much, Melissa. I want to thank you and Ed for inviting me here. I'm really excited to read to a group of writers outside my own country. I'm gonna read from my last three books, beginning with the middle one. I started it in 2019. I was really interested in my digital self and started thinking about that, and I soon realized it was my global self. As I started thinking about how I put my image forward, my brand forward on the iPhone, the world was coming back to me, and I began thinking about that. One of the root notes to that book was the idea of contagion, virus, getting viruses, going viral, etc. And then I began to think about the complicity, my complicity in harm pretty much everywhere in the world through this first world lifestyle I have here. I have a carbon footprint. I create nuclear waste with the use of electricity that I'm using now. And I wanted to write poems that connected to those things. I also wanted to celebrate the good contagion in the sense of music. I love music. I love other works of art. I love how that goes viral in me and inspires me. So the book goes back and forth between those two kind of polarities, if you will. And so I wrote the poems. The iPhone was the culprit. World poured into me. I poured myself back to the world. I, in fact, wrote the poems on the iPhone because I wanted to work with a very box of light, if you will, and use the rectangular frame of the iPhone as basically my template. The book's called Schema Geometrica. It has its roots in song form. The verse, chorus, bridge, triangulation in a song maps really nicely for me over the Shakespearean sonnet. 8 lines going in one direction, 4 lines coming back, and then a closing couplet that goes in another direction. And I like the idea that with the triangulation, you can create an area of content, right? And I can crash things together in a very short space and make the poems maybe larger than they seem, if you will. And so I wrote a bunch of them. I'm going to start off with one that speaks to music, and one of the titular gods of the book, James Brown, the American artist James Brown. I loved all the dynamics in his song, that the early funk he put together. And this poem's called Box of Sound with Some Funk in It, for James Brown. Good God, when you say hit it, I hit it. When you say strike it, I smash my note, streaming gold of the body, just flashing horn sound now. Break, little window for guitar. Break, work it, giving the drummer some. Pompadour fry died and laid to the side. Voice, just vocal fry with subglottal pressure. Body, frenetic. Body, too late to stop now. The dynamo. Oh, hitman of funk. Born dead, but still born, oh shogun of funk. Down here in the hard, scrabble, dirty, guttural moment, Maceo, horn run, spine is yours, hips, coiling blood, dance moves pouring out of me like jabber, all slang, no image, just scream and wail. My weeping, stuttering, cold sweat, sweating presence, in your presence, in secure possession. Now I am listening of my own transfiguring. Excuse me while I do the boogaloo, redemption. I took Tai Chi for a while, and my Tai Chi teacher always played that wonderful flute music, Japanese flute music, to put you in the mind. And then when I got home, I played Susie and the Banshees while I did Tai Chi. a punk band. And I began wondering what the impact of the music was on my meditative practice. It connected to me in the macro world to an article I read about the island nation of Kiribati that will be one of the first places submerged as the oceans rise. And I wanted to speak to that, connect that macro to my micro situation. What I loved about it was the nation sits in all four hemispheres, which I thought was worth noting. So this is Schema Geometrica, my brain on Tai Chi versus my brain on Susie and the Banshees. The soundtrack song for this poem is one of my favorite songs of theirs called Spellbound. I could be in a church right now with a Japanese flute and a boombox, Ted calling out the phones, me lost somewhere inside my breathing in a troublesome flexor, those islets and atolls of pain that are my Micronesia. But Ted wants money to confirm the value, and so I stopped. Calmness should be spent freely, the way the ocean does it, or sky, given the daily news feed. Though those two can be punk or post-punk until we are spellbound. Ocean, like an upset metal going fractal, scouring whatever it can reach. Oh, Kiribati, I feel that abrasion now. Left side, lumbar, hinge of the knee. And so I slow breathing, find balance. This, my ragdoll move, coming toward you, with whatever value a gesture freely given can possess. I call it rising ocean, breaking through the fresh water pond. Poem about a baby shark. It's called Muse Theory, Baby Shark. Because it connects back to the ocean's warming idea, rising. Muse Theory, Baby Shark. Despair has not yet taken me as its bride, though it keeps trolling me with montage, sad, round eyes, child's say, over sloppy gruel, or some equivalent, sunken, ribbed dog on a chain. There's no sadness like cage sadness, orphan sadness, little rivulets of waste, the ingraining in dirt. Let's look at that adrenaline stress, human reef stress, carving at bone and body, shark stress now, waters too, acidic, are eating their triangular scales, killing speed and sleekness, apex, muscularity. Oh, hunger, it was a baby shark hurting no one, that pink-hued evening I stroked the belly against the grain at first, to feel the sheathing, then back again to sense the friction vanish. How it thrashed alive in the fisherman's hands, gnawed at air. Oh, hunger, he cut the line and threw it back. Barbed hook snagged in its magnificent. How would it survive? Teeth. As I said earlier, I was starting to think about being global and thinking about how my closet is a map of parts of the world and looking at trying to connect to the people who made my clothes, made my brand, if you will. And this one is about my pants, which were made in Mexico, a pair of Levi's. This poem's called Poem That Ends Up on Its Knees in a Pair of Levi's. So then I wanted to write a poem about my pants, which are hecho in Mexico. They have that provenance, being works of art, which is fine by me. I know a few words of Spanish, so I can mutter, gracias, Juan y Maria, gracias, gracias, Felipe. Me llamo Dennis. Es un placer conocerte. Como se dice in español, distressed, because the knees are so beautifully ragged, I must praise you. Though now, I think it is your own knees I must consider. Lo siento, mis amigos. Your jobs are gone. The cuts are being lasered now. Oh, Guadalajara, oh, San Juan del Rio. I'm on my iPhone in a first world condo, sunlight baking my white skin raw, slim pointer finger so unlike a laser coming at you. It pokes letters and then does it again. The keyboard is so small it keeps auto-correcting, killing my mood. Sidebar, perhaps I should consider an iPad. It's bigger, more lap-friendly. Oh, China, your language may be broken sticks to me, but I can write them down beside the teeming Gulf to say, ni hao, tu tam bien, haces Levi's, ni hao, everywhere. This might be the truest poem in the book, I think. It mentions James Booker, a pianist, an amazing pianist from the Bayou area, New Orleans, and then the comedian Jerry Lewis. The poem's called What Happened Is This, I Got Old, I Got Sentimental. What happened is this, I got old, I got sentimental. I fell in love with everything. Example, James Booker, the Bayou Maharaja, that was easy. Example, Jerry Lewis, that was hard. But it was spring, and there was big noise in the yard, and so I said yes, many times yes. Yes to that cascade of notes, to Vitalis' slicked hair, manicured nails. I preferred the chandelier in the brain, but most days I was just a 60-watt bulb with face and eyes. If I got my hands on a dog when I was out for a walk, great. Or heard a red-winged blackbird down by the river. They are suddenly here. They weren't last year. Or maybe I just watched 2 or 3 minutes of a kid's first bicycle ride. Yeah, that's what love is. A tense, wobbly ride over busted concrete, helmet like a piece of outer space until you crash. Yeah, love crashes, but you get back up, tighten that strap, power down the sidewalk, streamers flying, legs churning, that impossibly easy gear, twice the speed of the wheels, pedals, the color of popsicles. This book and the next book I'm going to read from, Flesh Plus Creek, were really informed by the job I had working for an engineering firm that built nuclear power plants. So I spent a lot of time talking about nuclear energy, fission, fusion, alternative technologies, electricity, reading Whitman, reading Dante, putting it all together. And this poem kind of comes out of that. I go to the lake here and see beautiful Michigan sunset over Lake Michigan. I take a picture of it and put it on my iPhone and send it out to the world. And it seems funny to me that I'm within 50 miles of a nuclear power plant there. So I'm taking a picture of fusion and I'm putting it on the web via fission and creating some kind of waste. It seemed pretty funny to me. Schema Geometrica, the poem's called, with data storage in it in a rain stick. I download a photograph of the sun and offer penance, which is a lump of coal. I cannot keep it in the cloud if I do otherwise. Oh, busy old fool, unruly sun, core like a deity, eating all the hydrogen in the room. We eat here as well, with each recharging. We have to keep the data alive, getting fucked, I think, before we are fracked. Either way, I will be your new silent lonesome someday, dead, but still a killing, nevertheless. Not even my wife knows all those coded tappings I snap with hacker prowess, so she can begin the grand deleting. All that hot gas, poems and pics, my rags of time, going really nowhere as she weeps. Just another ring in the non-abyss, storage, with no Dante in it, no Virgil. Oh, fusion, I thought it was you all along. I prayed to all the gods. I thought my blood a river perpetual, cellular data pulsing in my daughter like a rain stick, not quite a replica of me, but so lovely in its tipping, I believed, dear son, this mango-streaked twilight could be freely mine. Now, I'll finish reading from this book with a poem that goes back to that nuclear power plant. A friend of mine gave me formed through the mine gave me a piece of trinitite, which is the Trinity explosions, when the bombs were made, lifted great volumes of masses of sand into the air and fused it all together, and it dropped back down into this greenish, hueish thing called, they named trinitite, and he had a piece of it and gave it to me. I'm back within 50 miles of the nuclear power plant, getting a cup of coffee, watching the espresso machine grind my cappuccino, and it suddenly occurs to me that the amount of nuclear waste I've created with that cappuccino is equal to this little piece of trinitite I have. It's about the size of a teardrop. So it mentions those two things. Self-portrait with coffee and speed and a nuclear half-life. Sometimes I'm just a pinch of sand lifted by plutonium, then made molten. A melted green running down to the desert floor in quartz grains and feldspar. Marvelously complex, yes, Alamogordo gold. And sometimes I'm just sipping coffee in a Saugatuck cafe north of 2 reactors, 1 mile outside the ingestion pathway zone. I've gathered here with others to work the grid, the Wi-Fi's free, and escape the overages, breath and throat and blood and lung, but still I ingest, work the duality. The caffeine half-life I need to power home from a day at the beach versus radioactive churning at Stevensville. All those live rods feeding the rocket apartamento espresso machine so I can get my fix. Oh, Yucca Mountain, I'm going home now into the twilight, like you, unblemished, speeding, singing and speeding, Bluetooth on, radio loud, windows wide open. I'm going to read a few from the new book. It's Flesh Plastique. Came out in March of this year. It addresses more the job I had working for the nuclear, or the architectural firm that built nuclear power plants. I spent a lot of time writing about nuclear power, and was in fact taken aside with 2 other writers, and we were told we were going to save the nuclear industry. It was after 3 Mile Island, pre-Chernobyl. We had no clue. We had Bic pens and a stack of legal pads and no clue what was going on. But nevertheless, they gave us that assignment. It ends up being a writing about waste, what to do with the nuclear waste. There's no place to put it. Only one country has done anything about it. So this poem is dealing with that, and dealing with the large ranges of time that get involved with places like Chernobyl now and Fukushima, and with those critical, those reactors still dangerous for thousands of years. This one's called, poem's called "This is the Nuclear Age," and kind of touches on that, those ideas. It has 3 epigraphs. The first points to Sellafield Nuclear Power Station in England, that for years they made weapons grade material for the British nuclear bomb. They also provided electricity, but they also dumped barrels and barrels and barrels of plutonium, laced waste into the Irish Sea. When they were caught, they built a pipe and just pumped it into the Irish Sea. The upshot is that children who played on the beaches, swam in the water, ended up absorbing plutonium into their teeth as far away as 100 miles from the plant. They're currently decommissioning the plant. It's going to take 120 years to clean the site up. And then it's going to be needed, I don't know, guarded for I don't know how many more years, but 120 years to clean up this particular power station. It just blows me away. The second epigraph has to do with this flooring that was put in Roman banquet halls. It's called Aserotos Oikos, the unswept floor. Basically, in the tile was the remains of food that the Romans would ultimately throw down on the floor as they were banqueting. Kind of seems like a metaphor for the poem, those fragments, things thrown away in the poem. The world we walk through is full of things thrown away. And then Whitman's I Sing the Body Electric, which touches on the good part of electricity, I think. So this is called, This is the Nuclear Age. Turns out you can spread plutonium anywhere. in the stratosphere, the Irish Sea, the child's teeth. The barrel's dropping to the seabed with such hidden buoyancy, it seems precious whiskies were settling there. But then corrosion, plumes of leakage, children burying themselves to the necks in sand, the sea perpetually cleanses breathing air. And so I paused before the schematic. Rich, a boiler guy, wants to talk about a woman he's met. This is Boston, mid-'80s. And so we soft-core talk about her body. It's nuanced. I write poetry. He thinks I'm gay. So I have to cuss occasionally, proof I can handle women and or science. As for the schematic, it's just the list of refuse as fuel for the report I'm writing. Municipal solid waste, agricultural and coal mine waste, waste oils and sludges, wood waste, contaminated solids, hazardous, lethally poisonous materials. That's what you could ignite for wattage in Middle America then. So much industrial slag, you'd think we'd solve the equation for recovery. What we create is waste. What we throw away, electricity, beautiful lightning, shunted by fire and grid to windows, burning aquariums, corporate towers, toaster ovens, tape decks, steam irons. Overview. I had a 9th-floor window writing all this, overlooking Boston Harbor, stealing time when I could for poems, watching jets arc over the city as the sun rose and I saw its fire. I was married then, we had a child, owned 3 stories of corroded plumbing, live wires. Nights, I thought my body a slow fissioning, disguised as moonlight. Daughter between us, softly breathing, I was really a railroad tie on fire, smoldering with a footprint in a waste gas. What burns is the body. What is consumed is the body. What is resurrected, the lead acid battery of it, mechanical, durable, tonnage, metal, and glass. How a woman later, post-divorce, marked me with a bloody X to claim or cross me out, I could never tell. But she marked me done, sweaty, wasted, used. Fast forward, this is even later. Kay's call. Someone has taken her car to buy cocaine. So she's run in her pajamas, I don't know why, to a phone booth. Can we pick her up? Second wife and I. It's winter, 3 a.m. And so we pick her up, bring her home, draw a bath, check purse and blades for pills. She's an efficient smuggler. We've been doing this for months. Keep the spare room stocked with candles. Take her Chinese when she's in lockdown, the psychiatric wing. When she falls apart in my arms, her knife nearly burned out. I can feel the husk. Her belly, she will not reveal to anyone, a mosaic of scars. Flashback. Black Dog. Unit 2. That was the name of the plant, Waste and Coal Refuse, Minnesota. This is the nuclear age, Chernobyl. One of our engineers is going just months after the meltdown. We throw him a party. We think he's going to die. My gift, a black rubber ball in 6-pack with naked Barbies a friend's been collecting. Their faces blurred from thrift shop usage, nearly blotted out. A stupid joke, yes, but he comes back, alive, irradiated. Sarcophagus not yet poured, new safe confinement dome, not even a pencil sketch. Now it's built, it hugs, as I did each body, the particulates, degrades. What was the name of that dog that always bit me? The strontium teeth, those summer nights culling the animal in me? Because steel too is flesh. Reactor 4 churning another 20,000. Meanwhile, Kay got married. I wrote the wedding poem, then ran away, divorced, remarried. The wedding photographer. We could see that coming before she tasted cake. She has a child now, this is a rumor, and does not call. Time, a cancerous death loop. How it spirals outside our bodies, inside the cells. I had it once, was welded to it, like my brother, same age, father. But he's gone now, I threw him away. Brother, the same, with cause to me. All these rivers underground, packed with legacy waste. some of it at Sellafield, to be buried in containers the size of buildings, like prisoners in an oubliette. 100 years until the project's done, another 1,000 until it's safe. Father, long dead, dry, casked box of ash and a faux burn. Mother, exact same reduction by fire. Meanwhile, they're re-racking spent fuel rods near the Great Lakes, bringing what is already hot. I should write my brother soon, closer together, other sister. While elsewhere money mine, the critical mass of it, those silos of nothingness and value I covet, is serviced daily by algorithm, breeding fortune and exploitation. I have to claim, dear planet, charting ocean, rising, charting fire, charting wind. I was a young man once. I had friends. There was a woman I adored. How she took my body between her legs, those deep summer twilights, and cut my hair. Bare-armed, pushed my head down, scissors flying, until I was electric with delirium. And then there was an album many years ago my parents really loved called, I forget, no, it's A Taste of Honey, I think. Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass. I don't know if you guys maybe are familiar with that. We were really poor. We lived in a really cheap house, but it had a concrete slab on the back, and they would go out and put this album on and drink their martinis and pretend they were in Vegas. We were in Michigan somewhere. This poem is called Waiting for the End of the World with Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass. There's two sort of references in there. I don't know if people get them or not, but there's one reference to a book called On the Beach that had to do with the nuclear war and the aftermath. And then there's a Brave New signage is a reference to Aldous Huxley's Brave New World in the ending, where the main character has hung himself and is twisting like a compass rose in a silo somewhere, I think is what's going on there. So this is from my mom and dad. Waiting for the End of the World with Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass. With martini and Tijuana night. My parents on the concrete slab back of the house in lawn chairs, cigarettes and sweating drinks, the nightclub pose, prelude maybe, foreplay. Herb Alpert blasting from the cabinet, stereo songs about food, really sex. That's what the whipped cream is saying. Dinner, not ready yet, but they are richer for their love. I cannot deny them this. It is the end of their world I am surviving. Rations, grilled cheese, and tomato soup, crackers, anything frozen, canned. I am dark under the eyes. I am orphaned with new sounds. On the beach, wandering wastelands to come, world and runaway. Gas already 30 cents and rising. Brave new signage pointing north and south and north again. It's perfect decimal of misperception. Better drugs, later, more efficient lives. The only bet I made that night was hunger. Oven still cold. His mother bled her Revlon, nursing drinks, and caressed my father's arm. I have a number of poems in the book about my uncle. I want to read those because he had a life that was kind of thrown away, but he ended up having a life. He was born with cranial synostosis, that the bone in front of his head did not grow. It was locked. He was born in 1942. There was nothing to be done then. He was the fourth child issued from my grandmother, and it was World War II. And so they gave him to the state. He was awarded the state his entire life. He was always around our life as I grew up. It was, he was part of the crew, which I'm grateful for. We were told he wasn't going to live very long, but I don't know, 6 years, 8 years, I don't know what it was, but he died a couple of years ago at age 79. He had just an amazing American life. He had a real long life, but he's nowhere on the internet. He didn't partake of the world as we partook of it. And when he was buried, my family just threw him in the ground. no obituary, no service, no nothing. They didn't even embalm him. Just put him in the ground, and I loved him to death, and was really angry, and wrote three poems real quickly about him. This is the first one. Elegy for my uncle, or oubliette, craniosynostosis, that oubliette idea. An oubliette is just sort of a jar in the ground. The only way out is through the top. That's how they're going to control the nuclear waste in Sellafield. That's kind of how I felt my uncle was. He was trapped. There was no way out. The lid was shut on him being fully engaged in our normal lives. So anyway, elegy for my uncle, Laurier Van Horn. Analog life, fun and bomb life. You're gone now, that ceremony on Tuesday. No sweet medicine for the skin, but sky and the backhoe. 2 quick spits for the straps when they lowered you in. Still, man-child in your mama's arms. They're stacking bodies now to conserve space. A prison, a spent fuel pool, compression. Your brain still crushed by the power of bone. Or could it not? No God at the top of those stairs, no elasticity for continental drift, that cranial suture closed. I was a boy that led you to the movies as if on a leash. Dearest uncle, lover of cars, remembrancer of homes, postcards addressed to our normality, house on a pole because your papa loved purple martins. I never saw you rage, but I saw your stubbornness before a scoop of cottage cheese. You would not eat it. The nurse could not make you eat it. I loved you more. You were contagion, sun, around which my genome spun, precious metal returned to ground. The book is about waste on one level, but it's also about the amazing secular Eucharist we all partake of. Eating plastic, eating toxic forever chemicals, breathing. When Canada was on fire a few weeks ago, we had Canada in our lungs for 3 or 4 days. I read this article where we have, because we're birthed by this planet, we're built of the planet, we have plutonium, we have a base load of plutonium in our bodies. I'm sure it's not very much at all. But due to all the above ground testing that's occurred since Trinity, we have plutonium in our body that's 5 orders of magnitude greater. This just astounds me. I love looking at that stuff and think I have Castle Bravo in me. I have Tsar Bomba. If you've ever looked at the history and the plumes associated with the above ground nuclear testing, it's scary stuff. So this one's called My Pornographic Regime, the idea that the eroticism of wanting to be alive and all that so quickly turns into pornography. And then with Elvis Presley and the wild boars of Fukushima, the wild boars are coming down into the cities to mate with pigs in Fukushima, and then being killed because they're like highly radioactive. But they're in love. And the other quote, the epigraph speaks to that plutonium level. And the other quote is from Elvis Presley, which is why he's in the poem. And that's, I'm a hunk of burning love. My Pornographic Regime, take 17 with Elvis Presley and the wild boars of Fukushima. Oh, bodies slick as dolphins now, you mystify with criminality and fetish. A deep, fake graffiti bathroom digital scrawl. Body and brain, your high-def glory hole. Beautiful and lovely and base. So I fall as a leaf falls toward pleasure, where I store this love, where it can be hidden and precise. Barrels and barrels of it, an ocean dumping, radioactive, the schematic, plutonium in the enamel of the teeth, soil of the planet, this body by planet soiled. So I've eaten and might as well kneel before the altar. The decaying corium, the elephant's foot at Chernobyl, dream of the demon core. They're lynx again, though mutant, though the butterflies are dead. and bison and bear in the exclusion zone. Wild, indestructible horrors at Fukushima. They have mated with pigs. They are rewilding. Oh, stubborn, bristling, rotting, hybrid being-killed thing. I, too, am cut with eros and toxicity, fearing death by isotope and viral load, but still pursuing nakedness. Raw cage of my own mottled skin, seeking next skin forgery. My niece is a keeper at the zoo in Jacksonville, Florida. And I got a backdoor tour with her as the pandemic was coming down. I got to feed a bunch of animals behind the scenes. One of them was flamingos, which I really wasn't really flamingos. I want to feed the elephant, not the flamingos, but the flamingos were so much fun. They were hand raised. They were not afraid of people. And if you had a bucket of krill in your hand, you were golden. They swarmed you. It was like being attacked by these beautiful garden hoses. So I fell in love with these 6 flamingos. And then I saw a picture of about thousands of flamingos dead in a Turkish lake due to irrigation and all that kind of stuff. And it's kind of broke my heart, and it connected back to, I guess, a larger issue of despair. And then what was got sort of a crazy title, Despair in Open D. I was thinking I wanted to speak in a different tuning, if you will, as if I were a guitar. I wanted to speak in open D, so Despair in Open D. And then I was thinking a lot about sprung rhythm, Gerard Manley Hopkins' reversal of the I am. And so he's in the poem with he's on tom-toms in the poem. The flamingo's body was kind of like a tom-tom, just sort of the connection. And then sadly, a dead flamingo. Even in death, its body's taut. The drum skin, drumming drought, drumming salt, plain irrigation murder. Now, by the drone thousands, soft, carrying mounds, unflocked and untwisted, devouring eyes. Thirst all in all, in a world of wet, a last brief fury. I fed them elsewhere once. I was krill on human knees, part of that mothering bosom flock, by 6 or 7 flaminglets feasted upon. Grain of my body wrestled down by feathered living tom-toms, beaks just beginning to curve, legs pinken. And now one of them has siphoned a fleck of krill from snarling forearm hair. Another is full, face down in the hand, filtering open water for frantic remnants shed. Oh, world sorrow, world woed bird, the taste you taste is me. And then I thought I'd close with this poem from an earlier book called This Is Where I Live, I Have Nowhere Else to Go, which seemed like a pretty relevant title at the time. We're stuck. I had all these notes where I wanted to explain things, and I keep forgetting to tell you these things in the poem. This poem mentions 2 artists, Janelle Monáe and Fever Ray. And then it also mentions 2 poets, Robert Lowell and D.H. Lawrence. And the epigraph is from D.H. Lawrence. Title poem is called Lo-Fi Cut with Turtle and Bridge. It's about me running into a little turtle on one of my walks. And the quote is from D.H. Lawrence's poem, Tortoise Shout. I thought he was dumb. I said he was dumb, yet I've heard him cry. Lo-Fi Cut with Turtle and Bridge. I tripped on a runt turtle today, an intimacy like tape hits from along the river. And if it was nature, it was analog. And so I thought, I'll save it. Pinched it like a lens between the aperture of thumb and finger. It was not Janelle Monáe. So that's what I had in the non-communal earbuds, safe inside this screenplay. Thinking how gallant I might seem to someone watching from across the river, how elegant and pure. But really, I was just thinking how I talk too fast sometimes. That's what my wife says. I mumble. There's food in my mouth, or 3 or 4 ideas happening all at once, nothing meta, nothing tone. So I have to slow down and find words. How difficult is this? And then all those buried rhythms, which are a kind of eroticism when you think about it. I'm just playing the drums here. It doesn't matter what I say, like how I'm fearing death more and more lately, and then not. Or how much I adore women's bodies. I can't believe I just said that. Heterosexual white male adores women's bodies. It feels so cliche, so worn out, but it happens. It's happening right now, the way messy thinking happens, where garden becomes overgrown. That's what I saw in the scans. Something in my brain the shape of a fern, something pawed like a newt. Or it's just that fear of death again, misremembering, or my imagination cut loose. I can't tell sometimes anymore. I know I'm standing by a river. There's a dance move I'm considering I can't make anymore, but that's just Janelle, sometimes Fever Ray. This is death. If I touch my head, I'll feel a turtle shell, like Robert Lowell did in his poem, The Neoclassical Urn. He was famous once, but no one reads him anymore, so forget that. Just think bone shield against that inner dying meat, my paw of thinking. And then this hatchling in the hand, both of us alive in the urn of the world. But I don't kill it like Lowell did. I just blow a little in its face to see if it will shout back. I nail flick one of its claws, but I get nothing. It's just mouth gap, or a wavelength I interpret as toxicity because I've been too rough, or too loud, or too toxic myself. I get that. Tom says I should run the tape of this over a razor blade to rough up the sound, to hear it. For already I think that's just my vision running along the crimped edge of the shell. The idea that I could actually save it, or save anything, really, that's the degradation. Or my thinking that this line, this one right here, is a form of praise, or that intimacy is just a damp wreckage of blankets I saw under the bridge in the shape of someone not there sleeping. How raw and naked that was. I could barely look. More raw even than my own nakedness, before the mirror, before my wife. That crucifixion into sex, as Lawrence calls it, all that outreaching out of the shell, limbs extruded, spread eagle to scream in Pentecost. And if that's what the man does under the bridge, who am I to say he should behave otherwise? The dirt is so packed there, it is concrete, and like concrete weeps. And if that memory of my mother's morphine is just a dream of trains, why would anyone contradict me? I will come by another day and see many wondrous things, like a man returning after a day of begging to rusted I-beams in a raft of tears. Thanks so much for listening. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Let's unmute and clap quickly for Dennis. Wonderful. Thank you. It's a big hand from Charles. So we've now got some time for questions. If anybody wants to ask Dennis anything about the poems he's read, about his life as a poet, please raise your hand, put a question in the chat if you're shy, or if I don't see you, you can also just unmute yourself and pop on up. I guess I'll get us started while we wait for people to think of what they want to ask. I am always interested by people who write about things related to careers that are outside writing or poetry, because I do that. And you mentioned working with the nuclear architecture based side of things, and obviously you've got now a lot of focus on that from an environmental perspective as well, I think. And I'm curious about when that happened in your writing? Have you always written about that kind of stuff, or is it a more recent thing? And yeah, how do you draw that inspiration?
No, yeah, that's a great question. No, I finished my studies, and then I went to Boston and did 10 years of being a technical writer where I did all that work. So when I came out, I thought I got interested in the linkage between technical writing like Galileo and Leonardo da Vinci and poetry, and then somehow writing about nuclear energy and waste and all those kinds of things, trying to turn that into a book of lyric poetry. And that was my idea 30, 40 years ago. And I tried, I wrote 3 poems that got a starter kit. A couple of them got published, and I thought I was way on my way. And then I realized it just wasn't working. And so it got tabled until, in the last 3 or 4 years, it made sense to me. I saw ways in which to handle that. And I don't know what the trigger was. I think part of it was a way to crash it into really small shapes using these sort of broken sonnets that are in the book. If you think about, I don't follow a single idea. I crash and collage ideas so I can really keep the poems grounded in the micro, my own life, but I can connect to the macro via the wonders of the iPhone and just the idea that I'm connected to everything. And here's a poem about that. I turned the light on. I created waste in some way, shape, or form. Beginning to track that. So just recently, it all came together and made sense to me finally. I found a way to handle it, I think. So.
Lovely. Thank you. Yeah, it's nice how sometimes that, I guess, years of experience or time or whatever has allowed you, this thing's been in the back of the mind, and eventually you found the way to harness it.
Yeah, and I think it was, it was post 3 Mile Island when I started it. No, post Chernobyl. But I don't know if I had the environmental framework or the understanding or access to the data that I had. Now that I had an iPhone, the world comes pouring into me, and I track that data and an alert to, the AI watching me helps me by feeding me that stuff, because I spend time looking at that. I'm really interested in that. It's one atmosphere, one body of water. I mean, it requires a different kind of mindset, and I was curious at growing, if you will, through the poems in that direction.
Interesting. I have got a hand up from Jacques. Do you want to ask something?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, that's fabulous. Dennis, I loved your reading. I love that poem about your uncle. I've known people like that, and people who were sort of thrown away, not seen, but who had something. But I'm really, a lot of poets refer to music in their poems, but your poems are in a really deep, fascinating dialogue with music, with musicians across different genres, and I love that. And I wonder if you wanted to say something about that, what it is that you, because it definitely it deeply, yeah. If you want to say something about that conversation.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think we all come from different source codes. And I think I was really a math major. I completed a math minor before I switched to English.
Yes.
And I was, listening to a lot of music as I began to do worse and worse in my math classes, and going to a lot of movies. And then I got into a literature class, and I was really already, I'd already metabolized cinema and music as source code, as opposed to Eliot or Whitman. I came to those people after I had already been ingrained by that. And it took a while for me to fully realize that and then embody that in a form with these last 2 books in particular, where I'm not using punctuation anymore. I'm really just, if you think of the poems as old school tape, I'm just taping pieces of film together. or sound together, or film and sound together, to try to create both a visual rhythm, a logos, and then a musical rhythm. And so, yeah, I'm really music. I start there. I look to music as a form. I think it's root to what we all do. But for me, it's really important to listen to a lot of different kinds of music and see what kinds of things go on there. And I think what I love about them more than anybody else is that musicians can metabolize ideas at the speed of light. Put an instrument in their hand, they're going to try to figure out how to build it into the sound scheme. They understand the form stuff. They're so much, sometimes more fun to talk to than poets are, relative to figuring out that experimental edge. Where can we do it? What can we do with this? When I sit down and talk to my friend about what do I need to do in order to sound like I'm in open D? I'm going to change my tuning. There's a nice conversation with a musician there. Sometimes I don't know if a poet, you could have that conversation with a poet. So I really love that. In fact, I'm doing it now with some new poems. I'm listening to a lot of Keith Jarrett solo piano right now, every day, just kind of drenching myself into thinking along the keyboard and what that means and how I can build that into my own logos. So,
And I love that it comes across in the way that you say, you try something like that in a poem. You say, well, what if I say, I adore women's bodies, and can I say that? And I've just said it. It's improvising. That's I really love your work. It's great to hear you.
And thank you so much.
Thanks, Jacques. It was a great conversation. Is there anyone else who wants to add something or ask something? Ed, yeah.
Hey, Dennis, thank you. I don't think I've heard poetry that sort of meshes what you call the micro and the macro in that way before. And I did wonder about the form even before your reading was to take place, because it was very unusual. And you used the word collage, and the writing is just fascinating in the way that it brings in so many ideas, toxic waste together with deeply personal stories. So I am rambling here, but yeah, I was also fascinated by the idea of contagion. That seems to be a kind of metaphor, or a way of reading some of the poems, if you like, or unpacking them and the conversations. So I don't know if you want to perhaps say anything more, or just leave it to the poems to speak to that idea.
No, I'll talk about it I think it was at its root, I think it's touches base with that sort of Whitman-esque gesture of wanting to know, in his case, people. He stops somewhere waiting for me. At the end of Whitman, I want to race to run into his arms, and I want to have that connection. And so I guess I thought I wanted to do that, but I wanted to do it with things and ideas, and I wanted a more global thing, and I wanted to embrace the whole spectrum of my experience. It initially began with I've been writing for a long time, and I just can't write another poem about my dad anymore, or my mom anymore, or the stuff that you kind of use up when you're a younger writer. And it's like, I'm tired of my own autobiography, and then I do this, and it's like these poems are more my autobiography, and capture more of my thinking, and capture more of the range of tones that I used during my life than the other poems. It sort of surprised me. I kind of felt like I was pretending to be a poet in some of the earlier books. I was staying in the lane of what would I imagine to be accepted in American poetry for a person like me, right? And then I realized that I didn't have to be in the lanes anymore. And that was really freeing, and that poetry would say yes to that. And that I was able to use the collage. Do you guys know Joseph Cornell's boxes? The artist Joseph Cornell? Yeah. He's an American artist. He would get a box. You just imagine a shoebox tipped on its side, and then he would collage a bunch of stuff in there, and surreal stuff, right? Well, I love that. That was my idea, the box of light. That's what the poems were originally called. And so the poem was just crashing all this stuff, not in a surreal way, but in an abstract way that didn't get too far away from a narrative, an emotional scene, if you will, the emotion of the poem, the life of the poem. But it's in a really small space, and I just used sonnet form, that schema geometrica. That's the static version that I was thinking of. There's a Armenian director, Sergei Parajanov. You guys know of his work? He has a movie called The Color of Pomegranates. It's really amazing to look at. This goes back to the cinema part. It's basically silent film camera, stage, but he has all this angular stuff going on, symbolic, iconic stuff happening. And that became sort of the kinetic model for the poems. I wanted a lot of angularity. I wanted a lot of stuff coming, but I wanted the roots to be in my body and my emotions. All those poems exist in that space, even though they connect to the other thing. And the sonnet, the song form was a way to do that. I could just crash everything in there. So
what's fascinating is the, almost regardless of what is brought in, like you said, the poems are personal. So so that they don't, the personal stories, and I think that's what gives the poems as much of an edge as anything else, is that that emerges quite strongly, regardless of what you put in the box. It's almost like I heard you saying contagion sort of becomes connection. So it's very interesting.
Yeah, when I had cancer maybe 10 years ago, after a while I got used to it. It was like a companion. And then I had it removed, and it was like I had a couple of weeks there where I went, where did my friend go? It was like I was so used to carrying it and thinking about it. And it was like a rudder to the days, and it took me a little while to adjust to all that. But I'm glad for that, because I don't want to, something vital's at stake. I don't want a boutique aesthetic that is just simply full of all this ideas about writing and poems that don't connect to my body, your body, the life we share. Well, I wanted all that stuff there. I wanted the full range of emotions in the poem: deep love, passion, anger, rage, black humor, sarcasm, etc. In order to deal with all of this stuff, because I can't quite figure out where the moral ground is for me to stand on, and all this stuff. So,
thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ed. Then Mary's also got a hand up. Just unmute yourself.
Yeah, sorry, I was talking to myself there. Yeah, I was really impressed by this huge range of subject matter, and that it's also connected to your, as Ed says, your personal story, so autobiographical, and filtered with all these fantastic images that weren't, I didn't feel were from the imagination, but from reality. You know, just looking at calling a dog with strontium teeth, and there were a couple of things I noted. They're just so, well, electric with delirium. I mean, so connected with science and the real and the world as you see it. I was riveted, really. So thank you for such sharing.
Thank you. You're very welcome. As I said, I'm so happy to have had the opportunity to speak to you guys.
Yeah. And I'm curious to know if you play any music yourself.
I'm a frustrated musician, yes.
I
have a guitar downstairs, but I think I came to it late, and I don't have guitar mojo. If you
right.
will. You know, I can play chords and all that, but there's a part of it, the dynamics of it, just the nuances of it, I haven't quite figured out yet. But I started poetry young enough and have kept at it. I put in my 10,000 hours on poetry, so I feel a little more comfortable, you know, working the discipline of poetry.
Yeah, no,
as if
that's
that were the
obvious.
guitar. Yeah, as if
Yeah.
that were the guitar. Yeah.
Yeah. No, well, thank you. That's so
You're welcome. You're welcome.
so great. Yeah.
Thanks, Mary. Do we have anyone else who wants to say anything, ask anything before we head off for a
Oh,
quick...
you know, and I do
Yeah.
want to say I know Joseph Cornell, so it was nice to hear him brought up. When I first came across his work, it was quite a long time ago. I just felt so overwhelmed with emotion. I kind of felt such an incredible loneliness coming from him. It just hit me. It was just an intuitive response, and yeah, so it was nice to hear somebody else appreciating him. Yeah.
Then Charles has also got our hand up. Just mute yourself there, Charles.
Oh, sorry, I was talking to myself there. I do that a lot. Anyway, I really loved that. That was wonderful. I love music as well, and I put it into my poems quite often, but not in a incredible way that you do it. That's absolutely incredible. So yeah, I didn't really have a question. I was just absolutely marveling at all of that. So it's just incredible. Thanks.
Thank you. You're very welcome. You're very welcome.
Thanks, Charles. Any other questions or comments for Dennis? Is there anything else you want to share? Maybe where people can find you or find your books?
I'm on Instagram. I think the books. I'm on Instagram and Facebook. The books. I don't know. I think Schema can be got from Amazon. The other book might be ordered from Green Linden. I know they have the books.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, and he'd be happy to sell you some. He was here. Christopher came. I don't know if you saw.
Okay. Yes,
yeah,
I saw.
he's the
Yeah.
publisher. Yeah.
Okay, awesome.
He came to support. Thank you.
That's
But
lovely.
yeah, he's really fabulous. He has this really wonderful small press here. I didn't do this because it's kind of awkward, but each book has a QR code. There's an album with each one of these books. You can go and listen to my friend
wow.
Tom Larder attempt to wreck a couple of like 7 or 8 poems. They're really cool. I gave him full permission. And then there's one on this book too that goes to I think an album of 10 cuts. 3 of them are really. I invited a friend to mess around with the adding sound effects to them. They're really interesting. And then there's I think 7 of them where I'm just reading straightforward. But now and then I'll. This book, this is why I'm so lucky. I was able to invite artists to come in and make art for some of the poems and have really crazy black pages with lettering. Just the publisher is just such a fabulous publisher. So
That's awesome. That's lovely to see that. Yeah, you're able to connect the music and the art to the work. And Jacques got another hand up here.
Well, just a quick one. You were saying where we can listen to those albums, and I didn't catch that.
If you go to Green Linden Press, their website, and look for me there, all those album cuts are there.
You'll be stopping there waiting for us.
They'll be there waiting. And if you can't, reach out to me, friend me on Instagram or Facebook, and I can send you the link.
Fantastic. I'll find it.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, enjoy.
I don't know if you can access the chat, Jacques, but I'm going to put the website for Green Linden Press in the chat.
Okay. Oh, excellent.
Anybody
Thank you
wants
for
to go
doing that.
there. Okay, so I think that if there's no one else who has a last minute thing to say, then we'll wrap up this part of the evening or the day and take a few minute break before the open mic. But Dennis, thank you so much for being here with us and sharing all of these poems and thoughts. It's been really a privilege to
Thank
get
you
to
very
hear
much.
you.
Thank you so much. Nice meeting you, Ed. Thanks so much.